much before the dawn, I trace the shape of all we lost. The echoes of your fading song on the heart at such a cost. Every memory slips away like shadows chase the morning light. Carry me on silent wings.
They said he was the poorest man in town, and yet he was the happiest. He had nothing but love, nothing but laughter, and nothing but a family that adored him. But love doesn't feed empty stomachs, and happiness does not silence ridicule. Neighbors mocked him, strangers pitied him, and society branded him a failure. Still, he carried on. With his wife by his side and his children running around his feet, he had everything that truly mattered, or so he thought. Until temptation came knocking, a temptation that would change his life forever. His name was Daniel, a simple man, a husband, a father of 2. He worked odd jobs, earning barely enough for bread. But no matter how little he brought home, his wife would smile and his children would cheer. Their joy was his only wealth. But the world has a cruel way of reminding men of their poverty. Whispers followed him wherever he went. Look at him, happy with nothing. What's love without money? A poor man's joy is only noise. Daniel smiled on the outside, but inside, the words pierced him. And then came the offer. One night, a stranger appeared, a man cloaked in mystery, with eyes that seemed to see through Daniel's soul. He promised Daniel wealth beyond imagination, mansions, cars, power, respect. There was only one condition. Daniel would have to surrender something more valuable than money, something he never imagined he could lose. It was strange. It was unsettling. But Daniel was desperate, and so he agreed. Not long after Daniel accepted the offer, something strange began to happen. His wife grew weak. His children coughed endlessly, their small bodies wasting away. At first, Daniel thought it was just a passing illness. But soon, it became clear. The sickness was not natural. The villagers watched from a distance. They whispered. Some pitied him. Others mocked. But not one hand was stretched to help. And so, Daniel watched helplessly as the only joy he had left, the family that once gave him laughter, slipped away before his eyes. One by one, they succumbed to the painful hands of death. Daniel wept bitterly, but his grief was far from over, for when it came time to bury them, he had nothing. No land, no money, no family to assist. And so, in his desperation, Daniel did the unthinkable. He buried his wife and children in the very floor of the only property he owned, his single, fragile hut. The villagers, who once mocked him, shook their heads in silence. None questioned it. To them, it seemed the only way a poor man could give his family a grave. But Daniel knew this was not ordinary death. It was the price, the offering, the sacrifice the stranger demanded. And then, the stranger returned. This time he gave Daniel instructions. Preach, build a church, lead the masses. They will see you as holy, but you will know the truth. Your family grave is your stage, your wealth is your mask, and your dead family is your living sacrifice. Daniel obeyed. Within months, he built a grand church, larger than anything his town had ever seen. Crowds gathered, politicians came. The rich and powerful filled his pews. Daniel was no longer the poor man they mocked. He was now a priest, respected, feared, and untouchable. But behind every sermon, behind every applause, was the haunting silence of the wife and children buried beneath that very altar he stood on. And though the world saw him as a man of God, Daniel knew the truth. He was a man who had sold his soul. Almost overnight, Daniel's life transformed. From rags to riches, from a mocked pauper to a celebrated priest. Crowds filled his new church. Politicians, celebrities, the wealthy, they all came to sit at his feet. He preached fire and brimstone, hope and prosperity. But in the shadows of his newfound glory, something was missing. Where was his wife? Where were his children? No one knew. He never spoke of them again, not once. And yet, behind the pulpit, Daniel carried a secret. For the deal he made had one condition: he must never love another like his own flesh and blood. But Daniel's heart was weak. One day, a young boy entered his church. Innocent, bright-eyed, full of admiration. He looked up to Daniel like a father. Daniel, yearning for the love he lost, embraced the boy, taught him, guided him, treated him like a son. But in doing so, Daniel broke the one condition that sustained his wealth, and the secret he buried so deep began to surface. As Daniel looked at the young altar boy, a voice suddenly echoed in his mind. It was soft, familiar, haunting. Who does he remind you of? Daniel froze. His wife's voice, the very voice he thought he would never hear again. Terrified, he hurried back into his office, slamming the door shut, trying desperately to blank out the sound. But the voice followed him. Does little Cola remind you of your son? This time the voice was louder, sharper. So close, Daniel swore he could feel her breath against the back of his neck, like she was standing right behind him, staring deep into his soul. Daniel leapt out of his chair in frustration, trembling, clutching his chest. He fell to his knees and wept painfully, his sobs echoing through the empty room. He dared not look back, for he feared the look of disappointment and disdain he would see in his wife's ghostly eyes. Day by day, Daniel became withdrawn. Yet every time little Cola approached him, Daniel's face lit up with a strange joy, as though he saw his own son walking toward him. The church members noticed. Whispers spread through the congregation. He still misses his family, some said. No, others murmured. It's something darker, something else. But what broke the camel's back was a prayer. One evening, during service, little Cola bowed his head and prayed. His words were simple, harmless, innocent. Dear God, Cola whispered, make Big Daddy smile again, as he has always made me smile. If not for him, then for me, dear God. Amen? A hush fell over the church. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. That night, for the first time in years, he slept peacefully. And in his sleep, he dreamed. He was back in his old hut, the very place where he buried his wife and children. Daniel's heart pounded. He expected darkness, fear, torment. But instead, he heard laughter, the laughter of his children, the warm, gentle laughter of his wife. Ashamed, he shut his eyes tight. He dared not face them. Then, her voice called out.
Welcome,
His wife's endearment. Her voice soft and warm, full of love. Daniel broke down, sobbing profusely. He opened his eyes, and there she was, his wife, glowing with sorrowful beauty. He tried to speak, but words failed. His eyes alone begged for forgiveness. She did not scold him. She did not curse him. She simply whispered, "Look at your children." Daniel turned, but when he looked at them, their faces were blurred, unrecognizable, like shadows of what they once were. Confused, trembling, Daniel asked why. His wife gave him a sorrowful smile and said, "Release us, so we can breathe well." And with that, she vanished. Daniel woke up suddenly. His pillow was soaked in tears. His chest was heavy with grief. He cried until the dawn broke. But deep in his heart, Daniel knew what it meant. To release his family would mean his demise. And so he carried on, drowning in sorrow. One sorrowful night, his cries echoed through the church halls. Little Kola, carrying a candle, followed the sound. He traced it to Daniel's office. Gently, he pushed open the door and peeked inside. There lay Big Daddy, curled up on the bed, tears streaming down his face, whispering, "Can you forgive me?" Kola stepped closer and called softly, "Big Daddy, are you okay?" Daniel, lost in his trance, thought it was his little boy. His heart skipped. He turned and, in the glow of the candlelight, he swore he saw his son reaching out to him. Trembling, Daniel whispered, "Can you forgive me?" And the boy, his boy, said, "Yes." Overcome with emotion, Daniel broke the one vow that chained his wealth. He cried out,
"I love you, son."
At that moment, everything vanished. Daniel snapped back to reality, only to see little Kola's bright eyes looking at him with concern.
"Go back to sleep, Kola."
Daniel muttered, trembling. "I'm fine." Kola obeyed. But that night, as he slept, he slipped into a deep trance. In his vision, he found himself in the church. Believing it was morning, he thought he was there to clean the pulpit for service. But as he approached the altar, he noticed something strange. A fragile woman in worn-out clothes pushing against the altar, struggling desperately. Kola hurried to her side.
"Good morning, ma'am,"
he said politely. "What are you trying to do?" The woman turned. Her sorrowful eyes widened in shock, then lit up with hope. "Oh my God! It is really you! How do you look so much like my little boy?" Kola frowned, unsure. He tried to hold back a laugh, thinking she was a confused stranger. "Ma'am, I don't understand what you're saying, but please, you must leave the altar. I need to clean it for today's service."
The woman, Abigail, Daniel's wife, smiled through her pain.
"My property is in there," she said, pointing at the altar. "I need to get them out." Kola's eyes widened. "Property? Under the altar?" "This altar is too heavy," Kola reasoned. "We'll wait for the elders to help."
Abigail shook her head, her eyes softening.
"Oh, little one, now I understand why he is so smitten by you." Kola grew uneasy. He tried to push the altar to prove it could not be moved, but, to his shock, it slid. His heart raced.
Abigail's face leaps with triumph.
See? I told you. My property is in there. Kola, curious and trembling, kept pushing until a hidden stairway was revealed beneath the altar. Abike led the way. Kola followed, candlelight flickering in the suffocating dark. At the bottom, Abike pulled open a door. A wave of cold air struck them. And then they heard it. A hissing sound. Kola turned sharply and saw it. A massive serpent, scales glistening, mouth wide open, advancing toward them. Kola screamed. The snake lunged, but before it reached him, Abike shoved Kola aside, straight into safety. The serpent swallowed her whole. Kola screamed in terror and bolted awake. He was on the church floor, near the altar. A crowd surrounded him, panicked, whispering prayers. Kola tried to run, but they held him down gently, saying, "Let us take him to the altar. Let us pray for him." Kola cried out, thrashing in fear. "No! No! Not the altar! That snake will swallow me!" Everyone was worried for little Kola. Believing the altar had healing powers, they laid him on it against his will. He thrashed, screaming, "No! No! Not the altar! There's a snake in there!" Suddenly, the altar shifted. A cold air seeped out. Gasps filled the room. At that moment, Pastor Daniel appeared at the door, pale and trembling. "I beg you, in God's name, do not move that altar!" But it was too late. The serpent emerged, hissing, its scales glistening, its body thick as a tree trunk. The congregation fled in terror. The serpent fixed its gaze on Daniel.
He fell to his knees, weeping. "Forgive me, Abike. Children, forgive me."
But forgiveness never came. The serpent coiled around him, crushed him, and swallowed him whole, dragging him back into the pit. Then, light.
Abike appeared, radiant, with their children by her side. She smiled at little Kola.
Thank you, little one. Thank you for releasing us. The children laughed, their faces clear once more. Then they vanished into peace. But Daniel's name lived on only as a curse. A man who gained the world, but lost his soul. And his story? It is not just his. It is a warning. A warning to those who believe wealth can replace love. A warning that not all altars are holy, and that not all wealth comes from God. If this story moved you, frightened you, or made you reflect, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to Echoes of Anne for more chilling tales, haunting truths, and echoes of stories the world dares not tell. Like this video if it stirred something within you. Share it with someone who needs to hear this warning. And join our growing community, where every story is an echo, and every echo has a lesson.
In the hush before the dawn, I trace the shade bird of pink. Lost between the tears we bring, in the echoes of our sin. I wander through the empty rooms where laughter once would fill the air. Now shadows wear your distant